So I finished reading A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J Maas and I need to talk about it. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Welcome to today's video, which if you haven't already guessed is going to be a chatty review and discussion all about A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J Maas. So if you've never heard of this book before, it is basically a romantic fantasy fiction novel, really popular, really hyped, and I've had it on my TBR for a while, but I finally got around to reading it. I finished it last night and I have so many thoughts that I thought I'd just do a whole video chatting about it. Don't worry if you've not read this book yet, because what I'll do is for the first half of this video I'll go into a bit of a summary and spoiler-free review, and then later on in the video I'll go into a more in-depth discussion which may have a few slight spoilers, but don't worry, I'll flash up a warning on screen just in case you wanted to click off at that point. So A Court of Thorns and Roses is actually the very first book that I have ever read by Sarah J Maas. I really want to read Throne of Glass at some point, but I've read a few reviews that basically said this one was better. I don't know if that's right. It basically follows this girl called Feyre who, she lives with her family, her dad and her two sisters, and they've fallen on hard times, and so in order to provide for her family, Feyre goes out hunting in these woods by her house. One day while she's out hunting she kills this wolf, and it turns out that this wolf is actually a fairy, because where Feyre's village is located, it's right on the border between the human mortal world and the kingdom of the Fae. As a kind of punishment, she's given two options: either she can die or she can go and live in one of the fairy courts in this kingdom, and she chooses the second option because she doesn't want to die. And so she's sent to live in this grand estate in this spring court in the fairy kingdom, and she meets all these different members of the Fae. There's different types of fairy, and the longer that she lives there the more she starts to learn about their internal politics and that not everything is as it seems. That's probably about as much as I can say without giving any spoilers, but hopefully you get the gist. The book is really good if you're kind of new to the genre. The world building had a lot of depth, but not enough that it was too complicated to understand. There aren't too many characters as well, so it's not like you're having to remember loads and loads of different names. What I will say is that the focus is very much on the romance. Typically in fantasy novels I prefer it where the romance is more of a subplot. However, the romance was pretty good. I wasn't sure how to rate this in the end, but I did give it 4 stars on Goodreads. There were certain things that I wasn't sure about, but I liked it, and as soon as I finished it I went straight away and downloaded the next book onto my Kindle, and I've started reading it last night. So that kind of gives you a good indication of where I'm at. So this next part I'm going to get into a more in-depth discussion, so if you don't want to hear any spoilers then I'd recommend that you click off now. I'm going to try not to give away the whole plot, but I do want to be able to talk openly and go into a little bit more detail without having to worry about holding back. So without further ado, here are a few thoughts and feelings I had while reading A Court of Thorns and Roses for the very first time. So the first thing on my list is that I wish I hadn't known that this was a Beauty and the Beast retelling before I started it. And I know that might sound a little bit weird because surely the whole point of the book is that it's a Beauty and the Beast retelling. However, I found that as I was reading it, I was looking out for similarities between this book and the original Disney film. I know that some people won't be bothered by that, but for me, I wish I'd been able to just read it and not be constantly trying to pick out certain details, like the fact that Feyre has her own special room where she paints. Even around halfway through when we get that twist, I actually didn't see that coming, and then when I saw it I thought, well duh, that happened in the movie, of course it's also going to happen in the book. I think if I hadn't known beforehand then I probably would have enjoyed it a lot more. I actually preferred the book once we got past kind of the 60% mark. I thought that the final half, because it deviated further away from the traditional Beauty and the Beast story, I found that I was enjoying it a lot more. So this next one isn't so much a bad thing, it's more of just a general observation. Have you ever been reading a book and noticed that an author starts to focus on one specific detail about a character? Tamlin's muscles. Once I noticed it, I couldn't unnotice it, and every time it came up in the text, I laughed. Next thing I want to talk about is the characters themselves, and so Feyre as a character, I thought she was likeable, like I didn't dislike her. However, I did think that she was quite weak in places. I've seen a few people mention that in the later books this changes, and so I'm really quite looking forward to seeing her development. In terms of Feyre and Tamlin's relationship, I'm gonna be honest, I wasn't convinced that what they actually had was love. Like, to me, it felt more like they were in lust rather than in love. I actually felt like she had more chemistry with Lucian and later on Rhys. So I've just really struggled to get behind them, which is weird considering they were the main love interest within the whole book. And the whole of the second half of the book is based around them having this great love. And it just, I don't know, there was something that just wasn't quite believable about it. But I'm really interested to see how that develops in the later books, because I have a feeling that there's going to be a bit of a love triangle situation going on. I've obviously not read the rest of the series yet, so I don't know for definite, but it's going to be interesting to see how that all pans out. Another thing I want to talk about is the pacing. I felt that it was really quite slow to get started, but then once you got into the middle, it was a little bit all over the place. There was that break in the middle where Feyre returned home to like her family, and I thought, was that really needed? Like, I get it that it was part of the plot that she needed to kind of be separated from Tamlin and what was going on in the fairy kingdom, but it just felt a little bit like it broke up the whole pace of the book. And those 2 or 3 chapters where she was back home, nothing really happened, and I just thought, this is weird. Okay, so I'm just looking through my notebook, and I think that's everything that I wanted to talk about. But if you have read A Court of Thorns and Roses, then please do let me know in the comments down below what you thought, whether you've agreed with what I've said. And yeah, make sure you give this video a like, click subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!